by 2050, about 40% of the world's youth population will be in Africa. And we have like demographics working for us. We have like age and just all those factors working into our benefits that it's almost like now or never. And the world is starting to notice. Like in the past, like Africa was looked on. Also, Afro beats has done a lot of like just penetrating and just introducing the world into like our culture and our music and our food. If you meet someone and they've never heard what jollof rice is, like who are you? It's like, are you living under the rock? And that didn't used to be like that.
Right. You're giving me attention, and then you're making me those, and you need those, and the beat that from my one.
Welcome to another episode of the Pepper Soup Talk Show. My name is Aki. I'm here with my partner, Toby. Our special guest today is someone, if you've been watching the Netflix show Love is Blind, maybe a familiar face. He's a Nigerian-born data engineer by training, and he's currently actually in business school at the University of California Berkeley. And so we are honored to have him on the show with us to hear more about his story. All right, the man behind the pod. And so, SK Alagbada.
Yes.
It's an honor to have you on Pepper Soup Talk today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for the intro. Yes, my name is Sikiru Alagbada. A lot of people wonder what SK means. Sikiru, it means remembering God. My last name is Alagbada. I was born and raised in Lagos, Nigeria. Left in 2007, so it's been 15 years now. Oh.
So starting from the beginning, we know you're born and raised in Nigeria.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about your upbringing, what it was like growing up as a young person in Nigeria?
Yeah, absolutely. I was born in Lagos, like Yaba area of Lagos. Went to high school there, kindergarten, primary school, high school in Lagos. I come from like a really big family, lots of siblings, couple wives. And it was just really fun growing up in that kind of environment. Like we all cared for each other. If you came to my house, you couldn't really tell who was who. It was just a very communal, type of living. We had a compound with like, staff and people and extended family. That was kind of like what my upbringing was like. Obviously it's an African home, you have your chores, you better be home on time. Can't get in trouble, all that kind of stuff. So same old. And then eventually I started college in Nigeria before I left. So I was actually at the University of Ibadan for a year before I left. So it was one of those situations where universities go on strike in Nigeria. So University of Ibadan was going on strike really indefinitely. Like we really didn't know when we're going to be back on campus. And I, was just looking for opportunities anywhere in the world. I didn't want to just go back home and do nothing, So put a dot on the map and landed an exchange internship program in Poland. So when I left Nigeria, I was probably 19 years old, something around that time. And I was just leaving to go to Poland. So even I had to make the case to my family, because usually when Nigerians travel, they're going to like the US or the UK at least, or somewhere
like Canada.
A lot of people know more, right? So I had to make the case to my family, I'm going to Poland, and this might be it. This might be my jackpot mission, right? So I left Nigeria in 2007. Went straight to Poland. I went to a city called Torun, which is can't remember what part of Poland it is right now, but I was actually on a European Union funded exchange program between Africa and Europe. And basically I worked at a high school in Poland. I was teaching math as well as English, because English was a second language over there in Poland. And I also did cultural exchange with being an African student in a Polish environment. This was probably like fresh, brand new EU Poland. They just joined. They were not even in the Schengen region yet. So like if you wanted to move around in Poland, just to go to Germany, which was like, I don't know, 45 minutes to an hour outside of Poland, you still needed a visa until they joined like the Schengen. So it was very old, pre-EU, pre-Schengen zone Poland. And I remember at the time, the city where I lived, there was only like 4 or 5 black people there in the whole city, like 300,000 population. And like you would walk on the street and people would just point at you like, that guy. Also like working in the high school there, like I was working with the school district, like the major school district there. So people knew me. It became like a talk of the town that, there's this black teacher in our high school from Africa. And, people recognized me in Poland at the time. I also took some time to actually learn the language. So when I lived in Poland, I learned to speak Polish. I took formal classroom classes to learn Polish. And then, my students in school would help me out. And I had like after school Polish lessons to catch up with the language. Because, like me leaving Nigeria, I was ready to like, just hustle and make sure like, I succeed and make a living for myself, even as a young teenager. I realized that learning the language is really, you need that to be successful there, So I took it upon myself, learned Polish, which eventually led on to like more opportunities for me in Poland. So right after like the whole high school gig I had, meanwhile, my school in Nigeria was still on strike, by the way. So right after the gig at the high school, I was able to get a job at a bank in Poland. At the time was like the second largest bank in Poland at the time. So the gig at the bank was really good for me. Eventually I started a small business in Poland actually, where I was doing like, we started like a language school. So business English, like ESL, English as a second language, tutoring was a really big business in Poland at the time. And, usually those roles were taken by like, very native English speakers, like Americans, Canadians, Australians. So we started a business where we would like contract with like, companies and SMEs in Poland to train their management staff on how to speak, like, communicate in business English formally. For me to be able to do that, I did a brief stint in London for like 2 months, just to get like some kind of certification for you to be able to teach business English in like a formal setting anywhere in the EU. So I went to London, did that, came back to Poland, and then started the business where I was, it was a really good gig at the time. This was when a lot of American businesses were just coming into Poland looking for like engineering talent. It's not very popular, but like besides like India or the Middle East, another very famous outsourcing destination for technical talent is Eastern Europe. So you'd see like American businesses having engineers in Ukraine or Poland at the time. I remember one of our clients then was like eBay. Like eBay had just moved into Poland, hiring like a tech engineering team, and those people needed to speak English to like their American management type of thing. So that was like really big business then. This time I was probably just turning 20, 21 at the time. But did that for a while, sold that and exited that business. And then eventually I moved to the US in 2009, landed in Houston. Houston was like my first American home. Nigeria Central, really. It was a very soft landing. I had friends in Houston that I was staying with.
And Houston's it's like Nigeria, right? It's almost like being in Lagos.
I have friends in Houston, so it was a very soft landing for me. I was in Houston for a while.
Wait, real quick, if you have to compare, the amount of Nigerians in Houston versus the amount in London, which one do you think is more?
I think the London probably has more, just because Houston is one city in America.
Gotcha.
Now when you tally up all the American cities, all the cities in the US that have Nigerians, then definitely more than London.
Got it. Mm-hmm. So now, being in Poland, I mean, that must have been a culture shock, especially coming straight from Nigeria.
Yeah, it really was.
And 3 or 4 black people in the whole place. Like, how were you received? And then also, how was it navigating Poland culturally.
Yeah. I remember I landed in Warsaw wearing like a dashiki outfit without a jacket, bro. in Warsaw, Poland.
Oh man.
It was like negative 20 degrees. You know, I was coming from Africa for the first time, fresh off the boat, with no jacket on.
Yeah. Wow.
I remember it was someone at the airport that I met that actually lended me her jacket because she was looking at me like, this poor African guy would probably freeze when he walked out. She literally had to like dig into her suitcase and borrowed me a jacket to put on. Yeah. And we're actually still friends till today, like 15 years later.
That's what's up.
But yeah, that was like, you just have like some fortunate encounters like that, people that saved your life with just a jacket. Because when I stepped outside in Warsaw for the first time, I was like, hell no. But yeah, like living in Poland was the experience was very, very different. It was my first time even leaving the shores of Nigeria, and I didn't really know what to expect. But you know, till date, I still think it's perhaps one of the craziest things I've ever done, because one, I was going to a country where I couldn't speak the language, which was a very big barrier. I only knew like 1 or 2 people I've been emailing about this exchange program, right? And, you know, you just didn't know what could happen. It was also my first time away from family and, you know, just leaving home. Internationally, and having to like fend for yourself and become a man, you know, by yourself in a foreign country. So definitely lots of learnings, made a lot of mistakes, but eventually I was determined to like, going back to Nigeria at that point was not really an option, you know? So I was just like, shoot, whatever it takes, you know, like you just have to do whatever.
You gotta make it work.
Survive, make it work, exactly.
And I heard you say that you exited a company.
Yes.
So you sold the company?
Yeah. It was a small ESL business where, you know, we had clients on our roster and we're charging them to teach, to even hire people locally. So a lot of times when like Americans or British people go to Poland. So let's say you're like a college student, you can spend like a summer in Europe. And you could speak English. We could train you, like bring you up to speed real quickly. So people were doing it as like a part-time gig. Sometimes you see like Americans or Canadian or even Australians living in Poland, and they just need like side income. So it wasn't like a full-time job for that. It was more like contracting. But it was a really, really lucrative gig back then. I
mean, that's amazing that you're able to have that experience at that stage. Also, because that was even following that you came to the U.S. and then you went to Baylor, right?
Yes.
So you had that early business experience even before going into the formal.
So I was in Houston. When I landed in Houston, you know, lots of Nigerians, lots of Houston nightlife back then. But I was actually in medical school in Nigeria for a year before I left, and I wanted to finish school. So I knew that was like it was one of the reasons why I chose to move to the U.S. and not stay in Poland to finish school.
Got it.
They have some like English-speaking universities in Poland, but it's not the same. If you wanted to go to a good university in Poland, you have to go in Polish. Like, you literally have to learn physics in Polish.
Oh wow!
So, I didn't want to do that. Imagine trying to understand chemistry was like reading in Polish. I mean, there are people who actually do that. There are Nigerians who go overseas to like Ukraine, Russia. They have a really good like medical education in Eastern Europe. A lot of the doctors come here because if you went to med school in Poland, you could come here and take the board exams and get like board certified and practice in America. So people would go there for like to save on medical school costs, just like people would go to like the Caribbean to go to med school. People were going to Poland, you know, to get the medical education and then come back here and get board certified. So that was the thing back then. But yeah, when I landed in Houston, you know, was in Houston for a few years, and then eventually it was time for me to go back to school. At this time I was like turning 24, 25, something like that. So when I went back to finish my undergrad at Baylor, I was grateful because I was able to transfer some of my credits from my university in Nigeria, University of Ibadan. Baylor recognized those credits. So they gave me like a year and a half off of my 4-year degree program, which was, so I came in as a transfer student at Baylor.
Got it.
which was really great because, you know, at this time I was already like 25.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to like start undergrad again from the scratch. So I had a lot of like my science credits, like physics, chemistry, math, all of that, but still had to take like those science credits at Baylor as well. When I started at Baylor, I actually went back pre-med. So I was pre-med at Baylor again for like a year thereabout, and then around like my junior year there, I was just like, I think one of the things that really did it for me was in my junior year at Baylor, this was already like 2013 ish. I had the opportunity to work on the Obamacare project. It was like a summer internship in my junior year at Baylor, and this was around when Obama was getting ready for his second term, and when healthcare.gov was launching, and you know, there was a lot of mess about how it didn't work, people couldn't enroll, blah blah blah. So I was fortunate to do a summer internship at a consulting company, an IT consulting company, where they got to contract to fix that. So it was part of the project that I worked on. So it was kind of like so it just showed me that, there's really a lot of ways you can like contribute to like medicine and humanity and healthcare without being a doctor, because typically, you know, like the Nigerian, you know, immigrant career options, the limited doctor, lawyer, engineer was really those options. And for me at the time, I really had to introspect deeply within myself. Like, do I really want to be a doctor, or am I just doing it because that's what Africans or immigrants do? You know, and for me, the answer was no. I really didn't want to. It was also because I had another option, right? Like I had alternatives. So I just went crazy with like the whole tech IT industry, went back to Baylor, changed my major, took new classes like database and programming and all that. I left Baylor in December of 2014. And I remember, I think I finished like 80 something credits in 2 years. Wow. I stayed on campus every summer because I was just ready to be done. I was already like clocking 27 at this point. So, you know, I stayed on campus. I took 12 credit hours every summer at Baylor and overloaded on classes every single semester, because another reason for that was because Baylor had like a flat rate tuition system where if you took anything more than like 12 hours, you'd pay the same price as somebody who took like 18 hours. So I was like, say less. You know? So I remember my final semester at Baylor, I had to take like a course overload because the max is like 18 credit hours. But I had to take 21 credit hours. So like 7 classes that I had to pass to graduate. Otherwise, you know, when you're already at 21, if you add one more class, that's 24 credits. That's like 2 semesters. So it was almost like 2 semesters worth of work in one semester. But like I had maxed out on like, you know, like paying for school or tuition and all that. And I was just ready to graduate. So I remember I had to get like a waiver from the dean and all that stuff to take like a course overload. So that was what my final semester at Baylor was like. The internship on the Obamacare project also really gave me like my break into the tech world. I wrote requirements and software on the healthcare.gov project at the time. And even after my internship, the consulting company retained me as like a part-time staff. Like when I went back to school, I was still working for them in my senior year with those 21 credit hours. So it was like a really good gig, you know, like you're a college senior, you're making like almost like a consultant pay, and you know, like, and that was kind of like a lot of the story of my life, and you know, going back to school. Like I was like a 26, 27-year-old amongst like college undergrad. I remember my first college apartment at Baylor was like, you know, your typical 4-bedroom apartment set up in college, and it just was not working for me. So I had to like switch, like even like my leaving arrangement. I ended up, my roommate ended up being like a grad student. He was at law school at Baylor, you know, a little older, you know, it was just me and him. We could afford a 2-bedroom, just both of us. And that was just like a completely different situation than so I had to make sacrifices and changes like that just for me to be able to do the things I did when in undergrad. Right after undergrad, my first job post-college was in Austin. So I moved to Austin. Baylor is in Waco, which is like in that whole central Texas area.
Yeah.
Another reason, honestly, why I really chose Baylor for undergrad was I could have easily gone to school in Houston, University of Houston. It was convenient. A lot of people went there.
Yeah.
But I knew that if I stayed in Houston, I probably would not stay in school. It was like at the peak of nightlife and, just chopping life in Houston, where everybody was just moving mad. So I really had to, I wanted to be away from Houston, but I didn't want to be too far away because, I still had friends, family, business in Houston. And I wanted to be somewhere where I could come back to Houston if I was able to. Baylor, Waco wasn't like 2.5 hours from Houston, so it was drivable.
Got it.
But I knew I had to be like away from the scene. Like,
So you didn't have the distraction, but
exactly.
you still access Houston.
Exactly. So that really helped me focus too, like on campus. Like I never came back to Houston in the summers. Like I stayed in Waco, like boring ass Waco in the summer. And like spent my whole summers there. Another thing that really helped me at Baylor, and a lot of people don't know this, and if you're still in undergrad and you went to school in Nigeria, please go make inquiries in your school. You know how to graduate, you need to do like a foreign language class, like Spanish, French, whatever in undergrad, right? At Baylor, for the first time, I was able to use Yoruba language to satisfy my foreign language requirements.
Wow.
Because, like when I looked at my transcript and like how long it was for me to graduate last year, you really mean I have to take like 3 semesters of Spanish? Like, what are you talking about? So what I did was, I guess there's like a rule that as long as the language is classified as a modern foreign language, you're allowed to test out of it. It just has to be from like a degree granting institution in the US that's taught by like a PhD faculty and, recognized, blah, blah, blah. So I looked around everywhere, and the only school I could find that offered that was at Yale. So I just applied and requested to test out of Yoruba from Yale, and Yale sent down the test to Baylor, and I went to the dean's office and sat there, took the written test.
The Yale test.
Watch me take the test. There's 2 types of tests. So you take like a written one, they send it back, they grade it. If you pass that, you move on to like the verbal one. So you actually have to like speak for them to know that you actually know this language. So
who tested you with the spoken one? Is it like
it was a professor.
It's like a Yoruba.
Yoruba professor
From Nigeria, not so.
Yeah, absolutely from Nigeria. Yoruba man, like Yoruba professor out of Yale. And I was on the phone with him. I remember, like, he grilled the shit out of me. And like, if you only know Yoruba from like media, like social media, you cannot pass that test. Like, you have to have taken Yoruba language, on an academic level. Like, you can put all those intonation marks on there. Like, what your verbs and tenses are in Yoruba for you to be able to pass that, because it's like academic Yoruba. It's like taught it's taught at Yale. So I remember when I first did the written one, I didn't put all the signs on there. He sent it back like, we're not taking that. So I had to go back, re-punctuate all your things, sent it back. And then the second version was me speaking Yoruba on the phone with him and him checking my pronunciation and all that shit. And he even made me sing like a actual like deep Yoruba song. Like, this is not you singing like Burna Boy. No, like made me sing like actual like deep Yoruba song that our grandparents would sing back in their days, type shit. But that saved me like 9 credit hours of foreign language requirements as part of my undergrad. Saved me like, I don't know, at the time like 10, 12 grand in tuition I would have had to pay, and 3 extra semesters. So I was like, say less, like whatever it took. But when I left Baylor, I moved to Austin. It was like my first post-college job. I joined General Motors IT in Austin. So GM at the time was going through like this huge transformation where they just had a new CEO. GM being a car company, they didn't really want to write software. So in the past, they would outsource like 90% of their IT work to, Accenture, HP, BCG, McKinsey, all that. But they had a new CEO and they were building turning that around and insourcing 90% of all the IT work and only outsourcing the 10% they couldn't handle in-house. So it was a great time to be in Austin. GM was growing like crazy. I think at the time we had like 3,000 plus engineers at the GM IT. It was called the IT Innovation Center in Austin. So that was like my first gig. It also really created a platform for me to like really grow as an engineer at GM. After like 2 years, I got promoted. In an environment like that where things are happening a lot, there was a lot to do. Like you could experiment with different things, you could learn. There was also like managers that could support you, all of that. So I was at GM for like over 4 years.
It must have also been cool being in Austin because Austin was like up and coming.
Yes.
Innovation.
The whole tech inflow from California was just fresh. This was like 2015 in Austin. Was just flowing into Austin at the time. So it was a really great time to be in Austin. Not at the time. Also, there wasn't a lot of Black people in Austin. Still, Austin was still like very predominantly white. You'd find like maybe people moving from like maybe like Atlanta and other neighboring Black cities to come to Austin, and then after like 6 months they won't like it. They'll just leave. Like so after a while they would leave. But I did like 4 plus almost 5 years in Austin, and me and like some of the groups that were there at the time, like my peers, we really tried and helped build like the first ever like Black tech community in Austin at the time that grew to like almost like 2,000 plus people. Because we had to do like events and help people with like finding a job, getting their own stock landing when they moved to Austin and all that. Great time to be there. I left Austin in 2019, moved to Dallas right after that, and I did like 2 years in Dallas thereabout, and that was how I ended up on Love Is Blind.
Love Is Blind, man. Love Is Blind. We definitely want to get deeper into it, and I know, for the audience who's tuning in, they want to hear about, what that experience was like. Before we dive into the show, we would like to talk a little bit about Berkeley also, because we know that you're the African club president.
Yes.
The African Business Club president.
Yeah.
Right. What was that experience?
Right. So, in 2019, I moved to Dallas to join JP Morgan, also this time as a senior data engineer. I did like 2 years in Dallas, and then eventually, at this time I was like getting like 6+ years into my career as an engineer, and it was getting to a point where I built all this technical expertise. I wanted to kind of like zoom out and do something a little bit more with like a wider impact, as opposed to just being an engineer, just writing code every day. Like that's your job. You would ship products. I kind of wanted to be at the intersection of like both business and technology. I didn't want to lose like my technical skills. At the same time, I wanted to like work with people and like talk to actual human beings, right? Not just my computer. So that was when I decided to go to business school. Took the GRE couple times and applied. I was fortunate to get the consortium fellowship at Berkeley, which came with like a full ride scholarship, tuition free to attend. And I started at Haas in 2021, so last year. And it's been such a great experience. I'm glad I chose Berkeley because, one, I wanted to be in the Bay Area, like right in the middle of all the ecosystem. And I also live in Oakland. So Oakland provided another soft landing for me when I moved to the Bay. I knew like a few people that lived there at the time, people from undergrad. And then, it was just such a community and, really like welcomed me. So it's kind of a commute to get to Berkeley every day, but I don't mind. I've been in Oakland for like a year and a half now.
I feel like the Bay is so rich in culture.
Yes.
It's such a melting pot of culture, in Oakland especially also. Must be cool.
So at Berkeley, one of the leadership roles I took right when I got in was the Africa Business Club. We're a pretty small organization. My class of 2023 at Berkeley is like 290 people. excuse me. So we didn't really have like a lot of like African students at Berkeley.
Yeah.
But me coming in, I was one of those things that I wrote about in like my application essays, for example. Like, this is what I want to come here to do. You know, so it was full circle for me being able to do that. We also recently had our Africa Business Conference in April of this year, which we haven't done in like 4 years. So it was great to bring it back in person post COVID, you know, just get people. When I came to Haas, I noticed there's like a really strong momentum and excitement around Africa, and both from Africans and non-Africans, you know, so we really needed a way to like collect all that energy and try to do something meaningful out of it. And our conference really helped us do that. So, yeah.
That's powerful. Cool. So diving into Love Is Blind.
Oops.
You popped the bubble. So you said that the opportunity came about in Dallas.
Yes. Yeah.
So how did you get onto the show? What was that process like? And how did it come about?
Right. So this was like, I filmed for Love Is Blind before business school. This was like spring of 2021. Right. You know, I left Dallas like around July of 2021. So it was just one of those days where you just get a random DM from someone. So they reached out to me on Instagram. And at first, when I saw the message, I was like, "Shit, look at Lagos boys." Whose African prince is this? You know, like, whose African prince is this? I was just waiting for him to ask me for money.
They said for more 419.
Yeah, I thought it was a 419. You know, I'm like, damn, these people found me. Okay, cool. But yeah, it was not a scam. You know, I didn't respond for a very long time. You know, just didn't even believe. Like, I had never seen the show. I've never heard about it at the time. And, you know, one day I was just like, okay, let's see what this thing is talking about. And I just responded, and, you know, it was real. I talked to like actual people, and, you know, it was put me through like the whole like audition process and all that. And, you know, it was just, so at the time, season 3 was being cast in Dallas. So every season is in one particular city. I think season 1 was Atlanta, season 2 is Chicago, season 3 is Dallas. So I guess they're just looking for like, you know, young, well, not so young, but, you know, eligible bachelor who maybe have their life together, they have some stability, they might be in a position where they're getting ready to get married. And I'm sure they probably did like some targeting, you know, to find people who can be that. They also did have like applications, like casting calls out for people, but I never heard about that. Like, the day when I responded, I remember talking to like the casting director. It was like the last day they were closing casting, like on a Friday. It was like I was probably the last person or the last few people they talked to about the show. And you know, I just kept going. I never even really thought I would make it to like the final cast. You would go through like, you know, multiple rounds of them just listening to your life story, you know, just getting to know you, who you are, your life experiences, making sure you're in a space where you know you want to get married and things like that. And also at this time, by the way, because I know a lot of people have been saying things about like, why would you go on a show when you know you had to move, blah blah blah. But like, I had applied to business school, but I hadn't heard back yet. So and it was around those times where you just don't know what the outcome would be. So I had applied to multiple schools. I hadn't heard back yet. Which was, you know, right when the whole process of getting a Love Is Blind was going on. So, but anyways, eventually I made it to the final cast. You know, I remember getting a call and they're like, yeah, you're actually going to California. So, I was like, shit. But also like at the time, like I had like hella PTO days to burn at work. And I didn't even have to like quit my job or anything to do that. I just stacked up like 2-3 weeks of PTO to like go do. I'm like, why not? Like worst case scenario, I'm just gonna go have fun, have a good time. PTO days, you know, I don't have to take off work or, you know, quit my job or anything like that for it. So it was like right time, right place, you know. It was also during COVID, like the pandemic, you know, people were at home. Everybody was like, you know what I'm saying? So
this was
2021. Yeah. So I think the vaccine was just now coming out at the time. So yeah, eventually, you know, made it to final cast. And yeah, the rest is history.
Wow.
Now y'all know all my business.
Because when they reached out to you and you saw the message and you were figuring out, do I respond to this or not? From there, was it that you took some time to kind of think it through, or were they kind of nagging you? Like how did?
No, like I just didn't think it was real.
Yeah.
Like I really did think it was scammers trying to get me.
Right.
You know, like I didn't really pay much attention. It was like a soft little pitch, you know, this TV show called. I didn't know what the show was.
Yeah.
You know? And I just ignored it. Like it was one of those messages you get like, what is this? Just go about your day, you know.
Got you.
But yeah.
Yeah, on the I know you did an article with Berkeley, you know, talking about your experience. You did say your mom's a fan of the show.
Yes. So, you know, like it gets to a point where, okay, when I made it to the final cast, I had to like break the news to my family, like, yo, I'm actually about to go on the show. So I was sitting over here thinking I'm about to break this breaking news to my mom.
Yeah.
And when I described the show, she was like, oh, is it that show where people sit in the pods and they're right? I was like, yeah. She's like, oh yeah, I watched that show on Netflix. Like she'd be on Netflix, like she'd be on YouTube watching the Nollywood so and all that. So she had seen the show at the time actually. So I was over here thinking I'm breaking the news to her, and she was the one that was actually now educating me on how the show works and all that stuff. Shit, okay, say less. But yeah, I had to kind of do some convincing. My mom was just really like ready for me to get married. Like it was that age where you like whatever you need to do to go find a wife, just bring me a type shit. You know, of course I was, you know, concerned about, you know, portraying my life, you know, to the public and people digging into all your business and all that. But I also like just, you know, I was like, why not? Yeah. And it was also a time when like, okay, another thing was like a lot of the things in my life have happened in like the most like unexpected way, like the most unconventional ways. Yeah. If there's anyone that's going to find a wife in like from, you know, like just the most unusual way, it'd probably be me. And, you know, when the opportunity came, I was just like, shit, why not? Like worst case, I'm just going to go to LA and have fun and, you know, for a couple of weeks and shit.
Can you elaborate on that part? Like what else in your life has happened unconventionally or has happened?
So like me leaving Nigeria to go to Poland, for example, you know, something like people didn't really, people just didn't do that. Like, you know, like you just don't like go to Poland as a young teenager. Even like me leaving Poland to come to the US at the time, a lot of Africans that lived in Poland at the time were telling me that it's impossible. Like you just can't break out of Poland, you know, because going from Poland to make it to the US was like another immigrant journey like a victorious immigrant journey. And that was not the norm over there, you know? And even like a lot of things that even happened while I was in Poland. But yeah, like it's one of those things that, you know, when you see it and like, you know, I take risks sometimes, you know, so it was one of those risks that you take.
So that's how we got it.
So when you broke, you know, the news to your mom, she was actually excited for you? How did that go?
I honestly just think she just wants me to get married. You know, she knows the ultimate outcome of the show would be like, you know, you end up with a wife. And I also had to explain to her that, okay, so mom, like, you know, you've seen the show, like, you know that, you know, you don't focus on the physical and you know, like, you know, the color, all those other things that people wanted. So I had to make the case to her that there is a possibility that I might come home with someone that's not Nigerian. You know, so she knew that, and you know, she was aware, and I think I prepared them. My brothers were mostly like on board, like, you know, guys, I have brothers, and it was just like, bro, you're crazy. Anybody amongst us is going to do it, it'll probably be you.
Man.
So yeah.
So man, it's great hearing you, you know, kind of dig deeper into the story of it. And for those who are unfamiliar with the show, just to paint the context, Love is Blind is it's a reality TV show where you are a participant. You have multiple participants that are sitting behind these pods, and you literally date other participants without seeing them. And so it's literally seeing if love can be blind. And you get to connect and meet other people and develop a connection with them. And then if you do find that connection or meet somebody who you can potentially see a life with, then you propose to them and then come out of the pod and get to know them on a physical level in the physical world also. So for you, SK, what were your expectations going into the show? Like, were you thinking with like you kind of had like a hope or a faith that, okay, I might actually find someone with this show? Or was it more of like, kind of like a crapshoot, like, these guys reached out to me. You never know what can happen.
So going into the show, I honestly was just very open-minded,
Yeah.
At least for once. Again, like I said, I knew like there's a possibility I could meet anyone, right?
Yeah.
The way the whole experiment works is like, like in the normal world, there are things that you can judge from just seeing people physically. So it was like flipping the script over like, okay, start from the emotional connection, and then end with the physical when you actually get to see them.
Right.
So the premise was okay. Another reason for me was also like, just being a guy, a man, we're really not like the most vulnerable, the most emotional people or species. Guys will always want to be guys and, tough guy, hard guy, all of that. And for me, it was just an opportunity to even like get to know myself better, like just discover myself, and I think that was also one of the reasons why I decided to do it, because I'm like, if I need to like talk to someone to like convince them to marry me for like without seeing them, at that point, the only tools you have is just your mind and your words and like maybe their voice or, whatever you have to hold on to besides just seeing that person. So it sounded very intriguing to me, and I just wanted to give it a shot.
For sure.
Yeah.
Oh, so through the experience, what have you like discovered of yourself?
I think one of the biggest things I've learned about myself is just like, being vulnerable. Like for guys, we have like a lot of things where you just expect to do or not do as a guy. Also like for the very first time being in an environment with other guys, where it was okay to talk about your feelings. It was okay to like be emotional. Was like a very, very different eye-opening experience for me. Like in the past, like even like amongst like your peers that you want to be like the Yoruba demon, and all that stuff. So for me, like for the first time, I was, and there was like 15 guys, when we started the whole process, and everybody just had like different journeys, different stories, and we'll all come back together and talk and exchange feelings, exchange real feelings, exchange like all of that. So for the very first time, I was in an environment with all these 14 other guys that I don't know before, literally, and we all just became like so close, and because we were going through the same experience together at the same time. So that built like some camaraderie amongst ourselves, and like you might have to pet your homeboy, right? Like, it's okay. And for me, that's something completely new. Like as an African guy, I've never been in that kind of environment before, so it was really, really that I would say is one of the things that I've learned about myself. I've also learned a lot about communication, right? Like I feel like I was able to build my communication muscles and communication skills in just getting your feelings across and expressing yourself and making sure that you're passing the right message across, even telling people how you feel. Like as a guy, like we're always like, maybe act like you're not feeling the person or something like that. Like, but shit, if you're on Love Is Blind, you better express your feelings, what I'm saying? Like, cause that's really all you got, like whether you're rich or you're good looking or all that shit doesn't really matter at that point. Like they've stripped all that away from you, so they really want people to like first make that emotional connection before anything else. So,
Well, saying that after being on the show, I kind of went through Love Is Blind Instagram page. I saw there's a lot of Nigerian followers in the comments and everything for you. They have like Pidgin, Yoruba, all these languages in the comments. I was like, did you feel any pushback or anything back from home?
I mean, obviously, like, going on a show like that, that there'll be like multiple opinions about, what you did and what you didn't do. I do have to say though, like, I'm really, really impressed about how invested people are even just like about like protecting the African brand. Like a lot of people would say, don't go and disgrace us, don't go and embarrass us on this show. But yeah, people are really invested. Of course, people have like different opinions, you know, like he shouldn't have done that, he shouldn't have said that. But like this was like my very first time on TV. Like I've never been on TV. I've never been a TV guy, TV person. And also people have to realize that we filmed so many hours of footage that did not make it to air. Like things get really edited. You know, it was like almost like a month plus, almost 6 weeks of filming that gets put into like just 10 hours, you know? So a lot of conversations, a lot of moments, a lot of different anecdotes, facial reactions that didn't really happen the way it happened, you know. Editing will have to be get edited to create a story. You know, like imagine if, you know, you just watch a TV show and all the 5 couples are just like up here and like that's not exciting. That's not like good TV, you know. So you need to have like different angles, different perspectives. And
how do you feel?
Wait, before that, you did mention how things are edited. So just kind of fast forward to the end. So we did see the clip. You said I don't, you know, at the altar. But the transition was such a long pause, and I was like, "Oh, you waiting for like a whole 5 minutes?" They even panned to your mom saying, "I do" before you did, and I was like, "What's going on?"
So it was just one of those things that like after watching like Love Is Blind, I have a huge respect for editors. Like I think they're just like the unspoken angels when it comes to like TV, because like for example, my proposal to Raven in the pod, for example, like when I went down on one knee and asked her propose, like I got a yes, like right away, you know, like within like a second. But like when you guys watched it on TV, they made it seem like she was walking around, contemplating, trying to think about this response. All that didn't happen that way, you know, all that was edited, you know? So, cause they have to create like a sensation, like a feeling, you know, like, oh, is she gonna say yes? Is she gonna accept this proposal? All of that. So a lot of narrative that a lot of people are seeing today was by design. And it's working because people are just so invested. Like, oh yeah, she's not feeling him, blah blah blah, like all this stuff. And you know, like it's fun to watch, honestly. It's fun to watch.
So Toby and I both have you know, we've seen the seen up to the date for the show, and I noticed that after you had proposed, at least what, you know, how it was depicted in the show, you did you know, you did your dance at the end.
It was
best. I was like, did you do best?
Yeah, it was definitely a best.
So
I think I make gifs with that now. There's memes with that.
So for you, because you spoke about the also like learning about yourself and also being vulnerable in that kind of space, but you also have all of these cameras and lights on. Like, what was it like being vulnerable and expressing yourself during the show, but then also knowing that these cameras are on you? Like, what was it like that experience?
So I think like after a while, you know, initially in the beginning, you're very conscious of like camera and people recording, but like after doing this for like days over days and hours on hours, like you just don't really care that much anymore. I remember one time in the pods, I was like sleeping, like I slept a lot. Like I'm a napper, right? As you guys must have discovered on one of the scenes on the show where I fell asleep on our first date. But like, I remember I was sleeping one day in the pods, in the men's lounge. And, you know, I just woke up and I looked up and I saw like 3 cameras pointing at me, still recording while I was sleeping. And I just went back to sleep. Fuck this, you know, like, so yeah, it's like that after a while, you know. Initially you get self-conscious, you know, am I looking good? Is this the right things I'm saying? But then after a while it just goes away, or at least you're not as sensitive to it as much anymore when you're just on camera for so long.
Got it. So we gotta ask this question. It's like the ultimate question, right? So is love blind? Now, after having gone through that experience and also being in the pod, but then also you got to know your fiance in in the physical world,
Right,
also
right.
from that perspective of it being reversed. Do you feel like love is blind?
Yeah, I honestly think love can be blind, you know, for a lot of people, and it also really just depends on like what you put into it and what you try to get out of it. I think a lot of things you guys also didn't really see was like just the process of me and Raven like dating and getting to know each other and falling in love and all that stuff. I think all that was edited out to like paint a different, like, you know, Raven Barty's really narrative. Yeah. Just because that's like more more fun TV.
Right.
You know, jumping jacks and you know all that stuff. Yeah. I kind of feel like if I'm a viewer and just watching from the outside, I would be drawing blanks. Like, you know, like how did they even like come about? Like how did they date? But like this was someone I dated like every day till like day 9 or 10, like the very last day, and hours on hours and hours of, you know, just being there, and but all that wasn't shown. You know, so there's got to be a reason why we ended up with each other, because you guys must have consistently like ranked each other higher on the thing to be able to even like end up together ultimately in the end. So I feel like a lot of audience didn't get to see that, and that also kind of played into the narrative of like, oh, she didn't like him, blah blah blah, all of that. So yeah.
Got it.
So now, you know, the Netflix released the shows and you're out here. How's it been being like somewhat recognizable and celeb out here? How you been adjusting, trying to get your life into normal?
I mean, like, okay, so like for a very long time, like right after filming, which I literally had to move to California, I just was in denial for a very long time. I didn't want to think about, you know, the show or like what that would mean for me afterwards. We knew it would be at least a year plus before it would air. And I just kind of parked that memory somewhere in my head that, you know, I'll get to it when I get to it. I also, like for my first year in my MBA, I also didn't like disclose this to like my classmates, for example, because, you know, you have NDAs and, you know, things you can't say or can't talk about. And, you know, it's a college campus, words get around. But so other than that, honestly, another main reason why I just kind of kept it to myself was I just really wanted like a normal first year MBA experience. I didn't want to be known as the Love is Blind guy the whole 2 years of my MBA program. So I just really wanted like a first normal grad school experience without people judging you or even knowing you or, you know, all of that. And I think that was the main reason why I just kind of kept it on the low. Now the show is out, you know, even like breaking the news to my classmates was quite a thing, because a lot of them watch the show and people are like really huge fans of the show. And this guy on the show you're watching on TV is like, you're sitting next to class, you know? So, but yeah, ever since the show has aired, like, you know, now you have like people walking up to you and recognizing you in public. And, all that's very foreign to me. Like, that's just not me naturally. And I'm just having to like learn and, you know, how to handle that. And I also have to thank Netflix. Like they've really given us a lot of resources when it comes to like, you know, just preparing your mind, like mentally for like all this stuff that comes with it. You know, like we get like therapy, like whenever you want to, like, you know, all those mental, emotional stuff that comes with just being thrown into the public that you have to deal with. So yeah, we get like all the support we need.
Like they'll actually offer you therapy or therapy resource services.
Yeah, they pay for like, you know, like whenever you want to get like therapies and, you know, all that stuff. So we have that on lock.
That's what's up, man. That's what's up, man. So we know that the show is you know, the show is out there, right? And so what can people be expecting from SK and Raven?
I mean, as you guys saw, like, you know, we dated pods and all that. I ended up saying no at the altar. We did not get married. But, you know, eventually, like, we actually reconnected after the show. For us, I think also one of the reasons why I said no and why I wasn't too I would say scared to say no was I knew that Raven and I had a chance even after the show.
Yeah.
You know, I knew that what we built in the pods that you guys unfortunately didn't get to see was strong enough for me to, you know, for us to still have a chance in real life, away from the cameras, away from like, you know, like all the deadline that you have to go on the like the TV piece of it. I knew we had the possibility of making things work, and you know, we're still in good terms. That's all I'm gonna say, without giving too much away. But I'm sure you'll find out.
Yeah, I guess people gotta watch and see.
Oh, one other thing. I remember the first time I got connected with you was actually this time last year at the Wharton African Student Association. One thing you did mention is starting business back in Yaba, where you're from.
Yeah.
After going through this, you know, experience and actually knowing how it is to, quote unquote, be married with somebody, how did that change your perspective of, you know, maybe moving back to Nigeria, doing your business, and how you?
So yeah, speaking of that, like, you know, when I left Nigeria in like 2007, it was like really at the onset of what we now have as the largest tech ecosystem in Africa today. This was when internet was just coming to Nigeria, and you know, people were just coming online and all that. And when I look back about 15 years now, you know, I kind of have FOMO because you know, I left at a time where it was very pivotal in just making that. It was like the dot-com boom of the 90s in the US happening in Africa at the time. Was when I left. So like, you know, now that I'm in a better position, and you know, I'm really passionate about like helping African businesses or startups in the tech space like succeed and connect them with like resources and capital and, you know, just what they need to be successful. So I've done a lot of that during my MBA program at Berkeley, and, you know, even like me taking the leadership of the Africa Business Club was part of that mission. And, you know, we've seen a good amount of success, but there's obviously also like a lot of more work to be done. But to answer your question, now it's like just not a me decision anymore. You know, like it's, I think ideally in a perfect world, I'll probably find myself where I probably have more than one home, you know, where I have a home here in the US, I have a home in Africa, in Nigeria, where you know, I just have two lives going on, or two things or businesses going on in both places. So I think that's probably what it's going to be.
Because you said when you're introducing yourself, you said you originally you grew up in Yaba.
Yes.
And Yaba in itself has become a tech hub.
Yes, it's the Silicon Valley of Africa.
That must be, you know, you must feel like pride too.
Yeah. It's very personal, you know, because like people I went to high school with, people I went to primary school with are like founders today. You know, they've started like successful tech businesses and startups, and you know, like this street where I grew up on has like, it's just lined with like all this tech companies now, you know, like, and that was where we used to run around and play back in the days, you know. So like for me, like being in that environment is very personal.
Wow. And then now being a second year business school student, and you're gonna be graduating, and you kind of know the sort of impact that you want to make. And what is next for you? Are you still in that process of thinking that through, or have you already kind of?
Right. So a lot of my time at Berkeley, I spent around like just, you know, the startup entrepreneurship and VC ecosystem at Berkeley. Coming from like corporate America, General Motors, JP Morgan, all of that, I really went to Berkeley to like fully immerse myself in the startup world, right? I wanted to hit the ground running. I had a lot to like do. So apart from my work at the Africa Business Club, I also run Berkeley's on-campus accelerator program for startups. It's called UC Launch. So UC Launch is like an incubator program for Berkeley affiliated startups. So if you're like a current student or alumni or even faculty that's looking to build a startup, you go through UC Launch to like incubate your idea from, you know, product market fit, all that, testing and iterating on your idea, and it ends up in like a demo day where, you know, we have like actual investors writing checks to, you know, competition. We give out about $55 grand in non-dilutive funding to like the winners of demo day. It's like a hackathon, like a, almost like a mini YC that we have. A lot of our alumni actually end up going on to YC.
Okay.
We've had like 2 unicorns come out of the program.
Wow.
In the 15-year history of UC Launch. All the combined cohorts of about 160 companies have raised close to $700 million to date. So it's like a very, very good, pipeline for startups from Berkeley, and I co-chair that accelerator program. That's really like my bread and butter. So through my work at UC Launch and the Africa Business Club, I'm seeing myself either in some form or fashion doing something around that world, whether either launching my own fund after graduating, or even maybe like working at a larger fund, just to continue in that space and in that environment. I find that work very fulfilling.
I think it's a very exciting time for Africa, the diaspora, and you even mentioned with being in the Bay in Berkeley, how much you've seen people have this sort of desire to connect with the continent, and not even just Africans, but non-Africans. Also, what are you most excited about when you think about the future of African diaspora?
I think one of the things I'm really excited about is currently, right now, there's never been a better time to be African. We used to be like hiding our identity. Booty. We went from like booty scratchers to like Wakanda forever.
Right.
So I think if I had to choose a time to be African in diaspora right now, there's never been a better time than now. And I feel like, honestly, finally, like the whole world has really woken up to that. And other than that, we also have like a lot of other like macroeconomic factors working to our benefits, because by 2050, about 40% of the world's youth population will be in Africa. And we have like demographics working for us. We have like age and just all those factors working into our benefits that it's almost like now or never. And the world is starting to notice. Like in the past, like Africa was looked on. Also, Afrobeats has done a lot of just penetrating and just introducing the world into like our culture and our music and our food. If you meet someone and they've never heard what jollof rice is, like who are you? It's like, are you living under the rock? And that didn't used to be like that. All the excitement, all the momentum. Of course, Africa still has its challenges. Like relatively speaking, when you look at, there's only like a few African cities and places that people know about. People are still like really struggling. There's still very much a lot of poverty in the land, and sometimes just tweaking something really, really simple, or you can do a lot with just very little in Africa. Like I remember I was talking to like a high school somewhere deep in like northern Nigeria, where they still like take attendance like by hand, and they've never seen what a spreadsheet is. Like just like them having like one laptop or old ass desktop that you probably have a computer sitting in your storage, and giving that to like a school over there, and they have Excel. Now they can take attendance like digitally, and that alone can just speed up, like it can accelerate a lot that they can do with just a little. So people take that for granted a lot, and you don't really need $1 billion to make an impact. And that's one of the things that really keeps me excited.
That's what's up, man. That's what's up. I heard you mention people knowing jollof rice now. In fact, it was just this past week, Google had
jollof doodle.
Yeah. That was dope.
So things like that, like when else could you have? That's what I meant when I said it's the best time to be African.
For sure.
Yeah.
And we're rounding this interview out, but before we close out, this a question that we like to ask our guests when they come on the show. And you talked about jollof rice.
Oh Lord, y'all about to go there right now?
Come here. So we
about to go there right now?
We got these flags.
Oh Lord.
We got these flags. So this is these are. We got 8 countries.
Oh wow. We're really getting into jollof wars. Are we really getting into jollof wars right
We're getting straight into it. So what we want you to do is to choose the flag for the country that you believe makes the best jollof rice.
Okay.
And just wave the flag in the air.
Okay.
We're doing a poll here where we want to kind of get a compilation of who really makes the best jollof rice.
Okay. Well, there's only one jollof there's two jollof rice in the world. There's only two types. There's the Nigerian jollof and there's others. So I only know two jollof, the Nigerian jollof and the others. So
Nigerian jollof got a W for the day. Got a W for the day, man. So, SK, it's been a pleasure having you.
yeah, thanks for having me again for the second time. Yeah, it's always good chopping up with you guys.
sure.
Thank you very much for having me.
So definitely. But this has been another episode of the Pepper Soup Talk Show, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.